The invoice management system is going to act like a dashboard wherein you can see how many suppliers have updated their records, what are all the eligible input tax credit that the recipient can avail, and this dashboard is going to be functional from 14th of October, though it is launched from today. So when I say IMS, it is the basic intention of government for introducing this invoice management system is that from this month onwards, the GSTR 3B is going to act like a more like a return in the sense, more like a challan in the sense, none of the fields in the GSTR 3B, whether it is table 3 or table 4, it is not going to be editable going forward. So the all the numbers that are flowing into GSTR 3B will be like a auto-populated figure from various forms. The taxpayer, what he needs to do is that he just needs to log in on the due date of filing the GSTR 3B, pay the taxes and submit the challan. So that is the intention of government going forward. It is going to be that easy. So with that intent in mind, they have restructured the current form of GSTR 2B and GSTR 1. That's the reason why GSTR 1A was also introduced. So by introducing this IMS, it's going to be more transparent in the sense, currently if you look at it, the taxpayer, the GSTR 2B, whatever input tax credit that is appearing there is not in a position to avail the credit because of various reasons. Either the supplier has cancelled the registration, or he has uploaded the credits that are ineligible. So, or the supplier, the recipient also, there is a possibility that he avails the input tax credit in a wrong way, or there could be a reason wherein the taxpayer has mistakenly availed the ineligible credits. There are a lot of discrepancies that are happening from both ends, from that is from the supplier as well as from the recipient side. So going forward, instead of the recipient communicating to the supplier saying the GSTR 2B, the valid input tax credit have not come in, through the system, the taxpayer will be in a position to communicate on a real-time basis. So that is the intent of IMS. And also because of this, there are errors are going to get eliminated while claiming the input tax credit. So when I say the reconciliation process, currently what we are doing is that the reconciliation is happening between GSTR 2A and 2B and GSTR 2B and 3B. And also when it comes to outward supply, GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. Because of this process, introduction of IMS, there would be minimal reconciliation. I'm not going to say that the reconciliation process is going to completely get eliminated. Definitely, it is going to have a better, meaningful, and a simplified process of reconciliation process is going to be effective because of this IMS dashboard. And one more important thing which I have to highlight is that if you look at the recent times, the notices that are issued by department are majorly from the discrepancies between GSTR 1 and 3B and 2B and 3B, whether it is excess claimed, wrong claimed. So these notices are also will get reduced because of introduction of this form, of this IMS. So the IMS is going to be like the original intent of the government when the GST was introduced. It means that in 2017, when GST forms were introduced, they wanted to bring in GSTR 1, 2, and 3, but because of various reasons, it could not be implemented. Now, through this IMS and GSTR 1A, the intention of the GST law is going to be achieved. That's what I would say. So let's see now in detail how exactly is that going to be the dashboard, how the taxpayer can make the best use of this features in the IMS. in the coming slides. So when I say the key features of the IMS, you can see on the slide that the invoice management system is going to give the taxpayer, that means the recipient, four options. Let us say, for example, there is a supplier, there is a recipient. Let us call it as S limited and R limited. When S limited is uploading his GSTR1, the R limited will be able to see the details uploaded by S limited in his dashboard. So when R limited looks at his dashboard, he will be having four options. One is to accept, reject, pending, and no action. So let's see one by one. When I say accept, the R limited, that means the recipient is given an option to accept whatever is uploaded by the supplier. In the sense, once he accepts whatever is uploaded by the supplier, he's the 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 records that he is accepting will be going and flowing into his GSTR2B. What is he accepting? He is accepting the GSTR1. It means that the supplier's GSTR1 is accepted, through which the recipient is eligible enough to claim the input tax credit. Next, what is the meaning of reject? When I say reject, the recipient is going to reject the invoice that has been uploaded by the supplier, because of which the, the recipient will not be able to claim the input tax credit. So why is he going to reject? The rejection could be of various reasons. One, it may not be relating to him, or the uh, the invoice may contain certain values which are not in agreement with the contract that he had entered into with the supplier, or there could be reasons, genuine errors in the invoice that has been submitted, or there could be a scenario wherein the uh, you know the agreement or the price that he has agreed upon is not in line with what was mentioned in the invoice. So the next option is that pending. Pending in the sense, the recipient can keep the record or the details of the invoice in the status as pending. It means the the credit that is relating to that uh, record or document will not be flowing into the GSTR2B of the recipient. So what is going to happen is that the supplier might have uploaded the invoice, but the recipient is not in a position to take the input tax credit at that point of time when he is opening the dashboard for that particular month. So that the reason could be of one of the things what I can think of is that the supplier has, say, delivered the goods, dispatched the goods on the, say, last day of the month, 31st, whereas the recipient has not received those goods on that particular day. It has been received after 4 or 5 days. So because of which he will not be in a position to fulfill the conditions that are specified in section 16. So he will say that yes, I am going to keep this record pending and I will avail it only in the next month. Or there could be a scenario where there are some discrepancies in the invoice which he does not want to decide at that point of time. So he will be, in future, he will be in a position to take the input tax credit. So when I say the last option has no action, when the recipient does not take any action, it is considered to be deemed accepted, in the sense, when no action is taken, the recipient is bound to take the input tax credit, and the whatever records that are uploaded by the supplier will automatically will be flowing into GSTR2B of the recipient. So when I say the data that would be flowing into the GSTR2B on the 14th of the month, like subsequent month, there will be something called as a draft GSTR2B. It means that currently whatever we are seeing in the existing practice, what we have is the GSTR2B. The similar way it is going to happen on 14th. The data will be available in GSTR2B. You will be able to download. Invoice-wise details will be available. So if you feel that there are certain credits which does not belong to you, the taxpayer has been given the option of accept, reject, pending, and no action, through which, depending on the action that he takes, the input tax credit that are eligible will be flowing into the final GSTR 2B. So, for example, there are 10 records. In the sense, there are 10 um, invoices that are uploaded by the supplier, and the recipient chooses to accept only 8. Balance of 2, he rejects it. It means that the 8 records, whatever he has accepted, will be flowing into final GSTR 2B, and the balance of 2 will not be flowing into GSTR 2B. It will be lying only in the IMS. So when I say the data that has been flowing from draft to final GSTR 2B, it will be, there is a radio button called recompute. The taxpayer will have to recompute the GSTR, the in the IMS portal. Only then the draft from the draft GSTR 2B, the input tax credit will be flowing into final GSTR 2B. From final GSTR 2B, it will be flowing into GSTR 3B. So this is the basic structure of the IMS. So what is it? It means it is going to every taxpayer, he will be, either he can be a supplier and he can be a recipient. So he will have 2 tabs. One will contain the outward supply. The outward supply is nothing but the response that he got from his recipient of service on the invoices that he has uploaded. And the other one is that inward. It means that whatever the supplier has got uploaded through his GSTR1, that is coming to the recipient in the form of inward. So for every outward and inward, every month, the taxpayer has to take some action in the form of accept, reject, pending, or no action. So this is the broad framework and broad understanding of the invoice management system. So when I say the dashboard, the recipient can view GSTR1, GSTR1A, or IFF. So first let us understand what is 1A. It was introduced about 2 months ago. The GSTR1A is nothing but if the taxpayer realizes that he has committed any error or the GSTR1 requires any amendment after submitting the GSTR1, he can always do it through GSTR1A. So the reason for introducing GSTR1A is that the government wants the GSTR1 and 3B to be the same. They do not want any discrepancy or difference between GSTR1 and 3B. If at all the taxpayer has committed any error, that can be rectified in the GSTR1A. So 1A, or if 1 or IFF, whatever it may be. In case of QRMP, it is IFF. So when I say the dashboard, what you get is the invoice level update can be done. That means if any action can be taken invoice wise. If a supplier has got 4 invoices, by clicking the supplier's name, you will get to see all the 4 invoices, date wise or the number wise, whatever it may be. So because of which he will be in a position to take some action. What are the invoices that the recipient will not be able to see is that, or will not be able to avail is that, one, the place of supply is different. Say for example, the recipient um, has gone and taken the services of accommodation, like he has gone to some city and stayed in a hotel. Because of that stay, place of supply is the place where the immobile property is situated. That means wherever he has traveled, that would be the place of supply. So this automatically becomes the ineligible input tax credit for the recipient. So this ineligible input tax credit will not be appearing in the dashboard. So one is that it eliminates the error. Any kind of ineligible input tax credit which the system recognizes automatically that it is not eligible, it is not going to flow into the GST, IMS dashboard at all. The next is that 16(4) credit, wherein the due date for filing availing the input tax credit is November 30th November of the subsequent month. So if at all the supplier has filed any returns GSTR1 subsequent to that date, then in such case the recipient will not be in a position to avail that input tax credit. It is a barred credit. So those records will also be not flowing into the dashboard of the IMS. So these are all becomes the ineligible input tax credit. So basically the IMS becomes the platform wherein only the eligible and legitimate credits are flowing into the dashboard through IMS. So if I have to quickly show you in a pictorial form, so the supplier uploads the details to GSTR1 or GSTR1A in the form of amendment, and QRMP taxpayers are paying in the filing in the form of IFF. Once it is filed, then it automatically goes and sits in draft GSTR2B on 14th of the subsequent month. It is just not 14th in case of any kind of e-invoicing. The real-time basis it is happening. Same way when IFF is also updated on a daily basis, that time also the recipient will be in a position to look at the dashboard. So what are the options available in the IMS dashboard for the recipient is that he can accept, reject, he need not take any action, or he can keep the action for pending for future action. That means he's deferring his action. So once the minute he accepts, the draft GSTR2B becomes the final GSTR2B. Draft 2B becomes the final GSTR2B. Once it is rejected from draft GSTR2B, it gets rejected. That means it goes to the rejected GSTR2B. The rejected GSTR2B records will be lying in the IMS portal. When the recipient does not take any action, then it becomes the deemed acceptance. Because of the deemed acceptance from draft GSTR2B, it automatically becomes the final GSTR2B. From final GSTR2B, the input tax credit goes to the GSTR3B. Now let's understand under what are the circumstances the action cannot be kept pending. See, we are aware that we have the option to do either accept, reject, or deemed acceptance. Of course, pending can also be done, but specifically under these four scenarios, the IMS prohibits pending action. So let's understand what are those scenarios. One is a credit note. Because of the when you say pending is not allowed, if the supplier raises a credit note, which will result in reduction of outward liability for the supplier and the reversal of input tax credit for the recipient, so which is not permitted. Reversal of input tax credit, which was uh, reversal pending for reversal is not permitted. That means you should be the recipient should be in a position to accept it or reject it immediately in that same month as and when he sees the invoice records. Second, whenever there is a downward amendment of credit note, downward amendment of credit note, which is going to result in the increase in the liability, increase in the liability of the supplier. That is also not permitted. Third scenario is that downward amendment of credit note where original invoice or debit note was accepted. So once that original invoice was accepted, and again it is going to result in downward amendment of credit note. That means there is a credit note which is issued by the supplier. That has to be immediately, the action should be taken. Instead of that, the credit note is going to result in downward amendment of credit note. That means when you say the liability is going to increase, the reversal, the input tax credit also is going to increase for the recipient. That scenario is also not allowed. It means that once that original credit note is accepted or rejected, any suitable amendments for relating to that credit note is not allowed. That's what the intention. Then the last scenario is that upward amendment of credit note irrespective of original action. So the upward amendment of credit note is also not permitted, whether you have, in the initial original invoice was accepted or rejected. So this is something very important. So whenever there is a credit note is issued, the recipient can accept or reject. Any other alterations relating to the upward or downward movement of credit note is going to cause a problem. There are certain industries, this amendment, this action may result in practical situations. We will see when the IMS is rolled out. So once when we start using the IMS over the period of say next 1 or 2 months, we will come out with the practical difficulties, whatever that particular industry is facing. So once we feel that it is going to hamper the input tax credit, or it's going to result in uh, excess payment, or the system is going to prohibit the outward liability, which is the real due, in which is going to be really less than what it is actually, because of the system that's going to be prohibited. Then every industry can always approach the government or GST council, and then they can highlight their issues. But currently this is what the IMS says. So when it comes to the dashboard, all accepted or no, what are the invoices that will be once that 14th comes? So the taxpayer is bound to take some action. Whatever accepted or rejected will be moving from the IMS, and then it will go to the respective, either GSTR draft from GSTR draft GSTR 2B, it will be moving into final GSTR 2B. So the IMS will become empty. But if the recipient keeps certain invoices pending, that will always be lying in the IMS. So it is a responsibility of the every taxpayer to ensure that he cleans up his IMS dashboard. So depending on the IMS is, there are more items are there, then it is a time for him to communicate with the supplier, and some proper action needs to be taken. Either he may have to accept and then reverse the input tax credit, or he will have to communicate to the supplier stating, these credits does not belong to him. So there, in the future, when we practically when we get into the filing process, we may expect some changes here, because when the IMS is also getting added month on month, it may cause a chaotic situation for the taxpayer. So let's see, once when it is practically put into place, we will get more clarity on this. But currently the situation is that whatever is kept pending are going to be lying in the IMS only. Now, what about the saved invoices? We know that IFF, once it is punched in, it goes and sits. It is in the save form. So the QRMP taxpayers, when they are uploading their, when they are updating their uh, outward supply details, it is shown as a saved item. Once it is saved, the recipient also, comes to get to see what is available for as an input tax credit for him. Immediately he can also take an action. But when it becomes crystallized is that only after filing the GSTR1. So up to the date of GSTR1, filing of GSTR1, the recipient also will not be in a position to avail the input tax credit, but still he can communicate. So the communication will be flowing, but input tax credit will not get crystallized. So on the edited data, if the supplier deletes any records or amends any records, then it will not be, in the IMS portal, it will not be available. Once if he deletes it, the IMS portal will get it will not, it will disappear from the IMS portal. It's so obvious. Once if he deletes it, it will become nil. The IMS portal will look clean for the recipient. So next is that amendment. Now we have understood about the uh, saving part. Next, we are moving into the amendment in IMS. So, how many times amendments can be done? What kind of amendments can be done? Should it be done in the same month, or can it be done in subsequent months? If it does it in the same month, what is going to be the repercussion? Or if it does it in the next month, how will the recipient will be in a position to take the credit? We will see here. So whenever there is an amendment happens in the same month, say for example, the supplier uploads his GSTR1, and after uploading he realizes that there are certain errors in the uploaded GSTR1, then he immediately rectifies it through GSTR1A. So GSTR1A can be done till he files the GSTR3B. So when the amendments are done in the same month, then the recipient also will be in a position to take the input tax credit in the same month. Whereas if it is done in two different months, say for example, the the supplier uploads the details in month one, and month two the amendment happens. In such case, the month one, whatever was filed, once the GSTR3B is filed, that becomes the final. Then the month two, whatever amendments done relating to the GSTR1 which was filed by the supplier, corresponding credits will undergo change in the hands of the recipient. So this is how the amendment scheme has been designed. So now let's move on to the next. What will not be in the MIS dashboard? Now we saw that these are the records that will be appearing in the IMS portal, IMS dashboard. Now this is not going to be applicable for filers of GSTR5. It means non-resident taxable person. So now the question arises whether is it applicable for casual taxable person? The answer is yes, because it specifically says only for GSTR5 and also GSTR6. GSTR6 is IST returns. This could be one of the reasons is that only the branch or the head office is going to file the return. So it makes no sense for them to accept or reject. So that's the reason why there is a specific exclusion of these two returns from IMS. And also iState portal, where whenever the goods are imported, the bill of entry related input tax credit will not be flowing through IMS. Then fourth category is that reverse charge mechanism. Say for example, the recipient is availing the services of a lawyer, where the lawyer is a registered person. He uploads his GSTR1 stating it is applicable under RCM. Those invoices are all will not be appearing in the books of the recipient, in the IMS of the recipient. So there is no need of taking any action for the invoices that were uploaded by a taxpayer who's liable to charge under RCM. Next category of person is Rule 37A, where reversal of input tax credit beyond 180 days. This is also so obvious because the recipient is the person who's going to voluntarily reverse it because he has not made the payment because of non-fulfilling of Rule 37. In such case also, this is not applicable. Another category, as it was mentioned earlier, place of supply. Whenever there is a place of supply is wrong, currently also in the GSTR 2B, it is showing coming under ineligible. Because it is already predetermined that it is ineligible, there is no need for taking any action. This is going to, in the form of reducing the burden of uh, rejecting and then again not flowing into 2B. So this has been considered. The last is that credit, the input tax credit that are coming under section 16(4). So the supplier has uploaded his outward supply beyond the due date, which is 30th of November. So even if he does that, those becomes the barred credit. So from this year onwards, we can expect that this has become the confirmed non-receipt of input tax credit because it will not even flowing into the system. So once it is not flowing into the system, then the other conditions of section 16 are all not fulfilled. So it's going to be the barred credit. So these are the input tax credits that are not going to flow into the IMS dashboard. Next is that let's understand what is the impact of tax liability because of the action that are taken by the recipient. Say, for example, the recipient um, you know, accepts. Once he accepts, so it is obvious that he is accepting all the GSTR ones that are filed by his supplier. He becomes automatically eligible for availing the input tax credit. At the same time, the supplier is also liable for making payment for the invoices that he had already uploaded in the GSTR 1. So when I say reject, whatever records that are rejected by the recipient, it will not be flowing into the GSTR 2B of the recipient, but it does not mean that the supplier do not have to pay any taxes. He is liable for making payment of taxes. So whenever any records are kept pending or no actions or rejected, there will not be any alteration in the input tax credit of the recipient nor the outward liability of the supplier. It's going to remain the same. The only thing is that whenever he keeps pending, the recipient will be deferring his input tax credit, availment of his input tax credit. That's the only thing. Now we may ask the question, how many times he can reject? As of now, till before filing of returns, he can keep rejecting, he can keep communicating with the supplier. There is no time frame has been fixed. Number of times, how many times it can be rejected or action can be taken. Now let's come to the last part of our today's discussion, which is there are certain things which are open-ended. Will the invoices pertaining to previous period will it appear in October 2024? So when I say 14th, it is going to be rolled out from 14th of October. Whether in the month of say October, if a taxpayer uploads the records relating to September 2024 or April 2024 in the return of September 2024, will it appear in the August 2024 IMS? The answer is yes, it will be appearing. So what is the status of GSTR 2B? Now we are saying GSTR 2A, sorry, it is 2A. So 2A is also currently available. It will continue to appear. So can the recipient reject invoices multiple times? Yes, he can reject multiple times, but the liability of the supplier will not undergo any change. So how to manage? Now the next question comes is that is it manually, I mean, practically possible for the recipient to reject every invoice line item wise when the volume of transactions are huge? Yes, as of now, that is a scenario. Maybe we may have to see whether any bulk uploading of or bulk accepting or rejecting of feature are going to come. So with this, we have come to the end of this Crack the Code series on IMS. I hope you have got the clarity on the subject. For any clarifications or any doubts, please reach out to me. Thank you.